Reporting for duty, and a happy Wednesday to you all out there in my racehorse land. Nick Hines, the Sarge. We are here on this it's beautiful hump day, Wednesday, and I want to welcome in California West Coast Racing Manager, my good friend Joe Moran. Welcome to another edition of the Wednesday Works. How's your day going so far, brother?
Well, it's already started off better than last week. We got sound, and we're ready for a good show today.
Yeah, no doubt. I feel like I just saw you a few minutes ago out at Santa Anita. I just want to kind of preface this show. I know that there are a number of messages coming in regarding Moonlight de Oro. Again, our heart, on behalf of all of us at myracehorse.com. Hey, look, she's going to be back. It's unfortunate. This show is dedicated to the works only for Team My Racehorse. On the Friday show, My Racehorse Live, we will touch on Moonlight de Oro and the goings on there. Sound good, Joe?
It sounds good. I mean, and of course, just touching on Moonlight real quick, we still got to embrace the Grade 3 victory. It was an awesome weekend, and the ups and downs in this game, you got to embrace those ups because they don't come often. So when you get them, you got to enjoy them and take them when you get them.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting. We always talk about the process, for example, and, you get to that apex and you almost sometimes you got to get caught looking because you're like, all right, this is almost too good to be true. Yeah. But I think in her case, it was one of those where it was kind of full steam ahead. I mean, we were already to the point where we were on the Oaks Trail and thinking, okay, what's going to be the next step and the best step for her to get into the Kentucky Oaks? But suffice to say, it's life as we know it, and to try and not get too far ahead of ourselves. So, again, be sure to tune in on Friday. And, again, today's show dedicated our Wednesday work show, and this is work show number 2. So let's jump right into it. And a special salute going to Hannah Bloom, the hostess with the mostest. She's behind the scenes in putting the X's and O's together. All right, Joey, we're going to start by talking about our West Coast horse, and one in particular, a non-starting son of Medaglia d'Oro, who looks to be hitting in good stride in the AM. Let's talk about his most recent workout. It was a 3-quarter drill, and he's had a total of, it appears as if there are 10, as that 1 quarter mile out of the gate was not included. But give us some idea on what's happening here.
Yeah, so his first 3 quarters work. So he had 1.58. He's had a bunch of half miles under there, but first 3 quarters work. You'll see the horse inside of him, Extra Hope, Grade 3 stakes winner. So he's working with good company here, and you can see the horse. He's traveling really well under Nestor Exercise Rider. And the horse, he's just doing well. He did get a little tired. It was his first 3 quarters. So you'll see this work was designed. They hit 5/8 at the finish line. They finish an 1/8 of a mile past the wire for that 3/4 of a mile. And he did get a little tired, but you can see him here. He is getting asked, but he's responding well and working with good quality companies. So, Team Mandela was happy, and we're in the right track, and hopefully one more work, and we'll be on to a debut.
All right, so for the record, this was his first 6-furlong drill. Now, we've seen him in company. You mentioned the fact that, he may have just gotten a little tired at the tail end, but he's in with a seasoned veteran, a horse who's a proven graded stakes winner. And, at the end of the day, when you consider the fact that you have a young horse, newly turned 3, versus an older horse, this certainly bodes well. Now, the one question I had, and I know you've had the conversation with Team Mandela, Naismith's been a little more aggressive, and they've had to hard hold him a bit. Did you see him exhaling a bit more in this drill, or is it still a kind of a work in progress?
Yeah, I would definitely say it's a work in progress. Hannah, if you could start this clip over from the beginning, we can kind of highlight Nestor. You'll see right when he kind of appears, you'll see he tries to get a strong hold on Naismith, and that was by design of trainer Richard Mandela. He wanted him to kind of relax a few lengths off and see him finish down the lane. And he's pretty headstrong. He's competitive. Working in company like that, it kind of did engage him as well. So I don't know what Richard will do next week, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see him solo and really try to get him relaxed and to finish up down the line.
Well, I have to say that this is pretty exciting because when you look up the credentials of Extra Hope, he did win the Grade 3 native diver 2 back as a 4-time winning son of Shanghai Bobby for the JMS stable. So, we often look for the workmates as a guide. You see this many a time with Hall of Fame trainer Bob Baffert, and you can kind of assess, what's going through his mind. So the fact that Papa Mandela had confidence in putting Naismith in this situation, I think is ultra positive. This also, as I mentioned, being his first 6 furlong drill, this one on the flat, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just reading this question here from Greg that we got. When a horse is working on a regular weekly pattern, how many other times between scheduled work does the horse go to the track, gallop, or just get a feel for the track? Great question. I would say with most trainers, after they breeze a breeze like this from Naismith, he'll get a day of walking. Sometimes they'd get it 2 days, but most of the time 1 day. The following day they go out for a jog and then gallop leading up to that next work. So they get 5 days of galloping, a day of jogging, and a day of walking in between.
Yeah, that's pretty much an industry standard. Thank you, Greg, for that. Whereas these horses, and you see it even more primarily here on the West Coast. It's interesting when you look at East Coast, whether it be Northeast or you look at Florida, sometimes those workout patterns can be a bit more sporadic. Now, whether it's trainers, they tend to do more with their gallops, but it also could be weather pattern. Because one thing you have to remember, here in California, we've arguably have the best weather. I know Florida's wonderful too. But that being said, there's different, ideas in training styles. But I've known trainers to actually breeze a horse and they'll actually jog the next day to just kind of keep them, tempered so they don't get too excitable. So great question. Again, this is an interactive show. This is a live show. This is the Wednesday work show. Nick Hines, the Sarge, and Joe Moran, the West Coast racing manager. So that's Naismith. What's on tap for him next from a workout perspective?
Yeah, so we'll see him either come back on Sunday or Monday, and that would be the final breeze leading up to hopefully a targeted debut of February 21st, main special weight going 3/4 on the grass. So obviously it'll be all dependent on that last work, but that is the tentative plan as of right now.
All right, full steam ahead there for that son of Medaglia d'Oro. Certainly plenty of pedigree to get excited about, and the future, let's cross our fingers and hope for the best. Looks bright. All right, let's talk about Deep Cover. This is a son of Mission Impossible in training with Todd Pletcher,
Yep.
And he is down at Palm Beach Downs. This was actually his first quote-unquote recorded drill, although we had some footage when he was training up at Windstar, and I believe we had to work on last week's, but it wasn't quote unquote recorded. It was like a quarter out 3. So what's the process here with Deep Cover? And he is a gelding, correct?
Yes. Yes. That was right as before. It was before he came in, I believe.
Right.
Yep.
So,
go ahead.
What's your take on this work here? And this is a situation that a horse that could be a little aggressive in his workouts previously, as we had noted. And per our partner, Randy Goulat of Twin Creeks, he campaigned the sire. Todd Pletcher trained the sire. So the imprint is certainly there. 3 furlong drill. Was it last week that he was going a quarter out 3 and he was on the straight? Am I right about that?
That is correct. That was at Windstar, correct?
Right.
Yep.
So his first recorded workout is what we're seeing right now.
Absolutely. Yep. And this was February 5th, 5 days ago. And to be honest, if we can start this over, I thought this was one of my favorite works I was excited about to show on the show today.
All right.
Granted, it's 3/8, and as Randy said, you can see here he's kind of throwing up his head. He's keen. He wants to just go. That's his personality. But once he kind of gets the okay from the rider to go, he's in the bridle and he's very, very forwardly going. I like the way he travels, and he's all about his business. I do think there is still some maturing for him to do, but you can see he's got ability in him, and I'm excited to see him develop.
Well, the one thing you can appreciate, and when we had scouted this horse last spring, a horse that has great efficiency, and when you consider the fact that he breezed over that synthetic racetrack at the safe track at OBS, the one thing about the Mission Impossible stats, they're not great on synthetic. So the fact that he worked as he had done, and in retrospect, the time I think has benefited him tremendously. And again, props to our partner Randy Goulat, who gave this horse the time necessary, allowed him to kind of fill out, develop. Because this horse certainly gives me the impression, Joe, that he has more volume than I recall last year.
Yeah, I would agree. And now I haven't seen him in quite some time, but he's definitely filled out. I mean, you could just see him striding out right here. He's looking like a mature racehorse now. Mentally, I still think we still got some ways to go, but physically, he's definitely matured into a nice 3-year-old right now.
All right, question from Judy Newman. She said, how do you know to gallop a horse a 3 furlongs versus 6 furlongs versus more? And I think you're basically asking, how do you know to work a horse? Because obviously this is a kind of a simulated race by yourself. It's kind of like driver's ed in high school, but essentially you're by yourself. A lot of it is predicated upon heart rate, how quickly they recover with their heart rate, how much water they drink, what their activity is after the drill. It's just like any workout. Say, for example, you had early this morning, Joe, when you woke up, you have a program, you do X number of push-ups, sit-ups, you kind of know what your max is. So you're having to try and gauge by what the horse is telling you. And anything you want to add in reference to that?
Yeah, and I guess the other thing I would say would be just depending where the horse is in their program. For example, Naismith, he's a horse that had X amount of works leading up. He's getting closer to a race. He really needs to get that fitness under him before. Where you have Deep Cover, just came into the track, that 3 furlongs is your starting point. So just depending where they are in their training as well is going to determine, the type of workout they're going to have as well.
Well, the interesting part of that is that obviously both horses were purchased as 2-year-olds in training.
Yep.
So they've never raced before. The dynamic with bringing a horse back off of a layoff, it's far and away different. For example, if they've raced before, as far as getting back to that aerobic fitness and that lung expansion, if you will, it's a lot easier to get a horse to the races coming back from a layoff who had raced before versus a horse who has never had a race. And that's the thing about Naismith. When you look at his workouts, we mentioned, I believe he had a total of 4 from the gate, which I found really interesting. But whereas some trainers might look at the gate, maybe keying the horse up a bit more, he was doing it to Papa Medella, getting in his mind to get horses to actually exhale and come off the bridle and relax, which I can tell you it's working, because that workout that we saw with Extra Hope, personally, I got the feeling that he did actually come off the bridle and at least relax a little better than he had previously.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And a good point, you were just chatting about it earlier about a horse maybe coming off a layoff, their first work back in training. We touched on it last week when we showed Amandrea's work at Highlander before she shipped into Sam Houston with Steve Asmussen's barn. She actually did have her first workout this morning, and they did work her a half. It was a question that we had on the last show. Will she come back 3/8 or would it be a half mile? Talking about her experience, being an experienced horse, she would likely be able to come back a half mile to start. It was on the slower side, but being that first one, they went a nice easy half. So just a comparison from a maturity standpoint of an experienced horse versus an unraced horse.
Yeah, and the good thing again with Deep Cover, he did and was in training back in July and August with Todd, and then obviously determined to in fact give him some more time. But looking at the pedigree once again, Vince Ramos, the half sibling by Pioneer of the Nile, a horse that earned in excess of $374,000. He himself ran in the Kentucky Derby. I'm excited because the fact that you got a horse in Deep Cover that has that the New York accreditation, if you will, and with the New York bred program, there is so much money there. If you've got a horse with an ounce plus ability, I'm excited. I'm with you. Thus far, I think I'm on the same page. I would give him a solid A with that work. And I know it's hard to grade a horse going 3/8 because they're supposed to look good doing it. But I appreciate the fact that he looked as good as he did.
He did it.
All right. Wednesday work show as we continue. A reminder that this is an interactive show. If you have workout questions, any thoughts on maybe something you might see during a workout video, Hannah's more than happy to pull it back up and we can do some more analyses. So let's move on to the next one. And we're going to come with our California-based horse here in Carpe Venom. Carpe Venom, her last start was on January 17th. It was I thought, a better-than-look 5th. Her career best speed figure in the Grade 3 Astra. This would be her second work since a half-mile spin over the training track at Santa Anita.
Yeah, and you'll see similar to last week. Last week she went 3/8 of a mile and 37 and change, I believe. Here, half mile and 50, very typical of what we've seen from her. She's traveling good here. I guess my one critique when she hits the wire, I would have liked to see her finish a little naturally on her own a little bit better, but still, she's in maintenance mode. Trainer Phil Diamato's not looking for anything more than this here today. But this is pretty typical of a work from her. We've seen this from the get go. She's not going to be lighting up the board with fast times, and it was a nice steady half mile from her.
Well, as we touched on last week, the last time she had worked over the main track there at the Santa Anita was October of 2019. So, the impression that he has given us that she's more comfortable as far as footing over the training track, which, has a bit of a grass vibe to it. It's more of a it's a sand-based track,
Yep.
but the tighter turns and the configuration there. But, again, she looked physically in tip-top shape. And I think at this stage of the game, from what I understand, Joe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we're kind of in let's find a race type mode. I don't see anything obstructive or anything in this workout that has me, encouraged. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I feel it's just as her, and I think when he gets more serious, he might stick some company in. Would you agree?
Exactly. And you've seen that a lot. Phil has used company in a lot of his works, not only with her, but when his horses get closer to a race, he works a lot of horses in company. And I think you'll see that here in the coming weeks. That new condition book just came out, so we'll review our options with Phil. But when I spoke to Phil over the weekend, he said she was doing great, and he was real happy with the way she exited out of that race and out of that most recent work.
All right, Mara Zeman, she says, how close to an upcoming race will a horse's final work usually be?
So this is a great question. It can vary horse to horse, the type of race it is and where the horse is going. But generally, I would say 5 to 7 days out. Just like you'll see horses work 7 days in between each work. A lot of times you'll see trainers set up the work 7 days out from the race. But there can always be variables, weather, and all different things that happen in a horse's daily routine that causes that to be 6 days, 5 days, or maybe the trainer just wants the horse to be a little sharper, and that can vary the schedule.
All right, so that was Carpe Venom. Thank you for your questions, Mara. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Hopefully that answered your question to its fullest. All right, we're going to head back down to Payson Park in Christophe Clement training Quick Conversation. And this workout took place on February 6th. It was her first 5/8 of a mile drill, 5 furlongs for her for the first time. And Joe, this was her 7th recorded workout since her first dating back to December 13th at Payson. So she's moving right along.
Yep. And you'll see this is her first work on the grass. Trainer Christophe Clement mentioned this after her last work. He was slightly disappointed and just saying maybe she had a little bit more turf action. And he was very pleased with this work. So all reports came back very good from Christophe. And visually, I would say it was one of her better works. Not that I thought her other works were not visually good, but I'd say this one was more visually impressive. So maybe the turf's going to be her home. From her pedigree, I still don't think the dirt will be completely out of the picture in this filly's future. But at least the way she worked here, I imagine her first start will come on the turf whenever that is.
All right. She's working in tandem with a horse by the name of Entwine, who's also a non-starter. This is an Irish-bred daughter of Fast Company out of the mare Interfacing. So not much of a yardstick as far as the workmate is concerned. But I will say this. In looking back at the previous workouts, and, at some point during these Wednesday work shows, I would like to have like a compare and contrast, because we can talk about what happened last week, but we're not able to show it as, for example, right now.
Yeah.
But Quick Conversation, I noted in, I think it was last week's Breeze, and I know that we're kind of at the mercy of getting quality content. We want to thank Christophe Clement and, of course, XBTV for providing that. But the one thing I remember from last week, she had a little bit of neck lather.
Yep.
And, maybe had her mind in another place. But you see that often with these young horses as they develop. But I like the fact that she settled into stride. In my humble opinion, she was the leader here.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And you can see, about 5 seconds ago when they're coming up to that pole in the video, you can see the rider had a nice hold, even looked over next to that workmate trying to see, are you coming up to catch me? And had just a nice hold on her. So, she traveled very well under there. And if I could remember correctly in that last work, I believe it was out of the gate as well. So maybe that could have, promoted that lather, getting her first gait work and getting comfortable with that gait. So that could have been possible something that affected that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The fact the gate work took place back on January 20th, and that could have very well been the footage that we had had. And, from a wanting to be perfect standpoint, perhaps would like to see her as she is going out here, just lower her head just slightly more. But, again, she had been breezing down at OBS. Obviously we purchased her from the OBS sale, and that is a synthetic racetrack. It's a safe track, and you'll see certain horses that either despise that track, and they don't work well, and you have to kind of read between the lines, or they can work stupendous. And once they get to dirt, it's like, wow, we might have a turf horse on our hands. But in any event, I think this right here is a very good sign, for us to see that Quick Conversation is certainly taking a turn for the better. And I think going forward, probably safe to say that her next work will likely be on grass, right, Joe?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Definitely from the feedback from the Clement team, I would imagine you see her right back on the turf.
Yeah, I think looking at her pattern, I wouldn't say that she's going to be ready in 2 weeks, but to say that potentially she could be in a race within 4 to 5 weeks, I don't think is without reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a question coming over right from Michael. So, I would say Christoph really hasn't given an indication exact of a timeline like that, but I would say 4 to 5 weeks is probably a safe assumption there.
All right, Quick Conversation. Nice to see the progress. I give her a solid B in this week's work. What about you, Joe?
Yeah, I would agree with you right there. I was really pleased with it. Had a nice stride, and I thought, like you said, she looked good in the flesh and that worked. So all's going well.
All right, so last but certainly not least, let's talk about American Heiress and her progression. And, again, I know that she's essentially graduated into the Todd Pletcher program, and this also at Palm Beach, and she was working in tandem with a horse who isn't quite named yet out of the mare Ready and Good.
Yep, and I thought very similar. I was impressed with her first work last week since coming into the Pletcher barn. She grabs a hold of that bridle and she's in the bit. So you could see her. She's traveling well. I would say she does have a little bit of that turf action, which I don't think surprises us by any means with her pedigree. But she's doing this all by herself. You can see that rider has a big hold on her. On the gallop out, you can see she maybe got a little bit tired, and the workmate actually, where I think she outworked this workmate to the wire. The workmate maybe ends up going a little by in the final eighth of a mile when they probably gallop out all the way to about 5/8. But all in all, I think this was a very solid work from her, and she's a good looker. That's what I'll say. I mean, she's really about her business and looking very good right now.
Well, and of course the workmate, akin to Sudden Surprise, earned in excess of $816,000. Was a multiple stakes winner, in addition to a horse by the name of Mo Reddy, who was third in the Belmont Derby last summer, and in fact won at Gulfstream the latter end of December. And I would guesstimate here that the workmate is likely owned by Mike Rapoli. So it's kind of, for me as a former trainer, when I have a horse that I've stationed to the inside of a particular horse, especially this early in the game, it kind of assures me, and I'm assuring myself and perhaps the owners, that I have an abundance of confidence that not so much this horse is the better horse, but this horse from a mental perspective is better designed to in fact be on the inside. You can see that at this stage, as you alluded to, she's kind of hard held, kind of had her head cocked there, but the workmate, grand looker, and being by outwork out of the mare Ready and Good, who's been a producer. So a quality work overall, but once again, this is very early on, and to get excited and break out the pom-pom and say, ooh, look at this 3/8. For me, this is great because of the fact that at least we have her in a forward motion.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Just nice, this is really her second official work at a track, so she's still pretty new to the game. Where at least Deep Cover, he was at the track. He was at Belmont with Todd Pletcher's team.
Right.
American Heiress, this is her first real couple of weeks with Todd Pletcher. So, Raul from King's Equine was raving about her before she came in, saying how good she was doing, and I think she's showing that. So, fingers crossed, everything keeps going this way, and before you know it, we'll see her progressing and hopefully making a debut in the middle of 2021.
Shout out to Leah and Susan Ward, as she alluded to, the fact that when you have a horse that works with, a quality individual, I think that's a great premise for the show. Now, granted, the trainers that we're involved with, that's the beauty of it. It's not as if, we're in a situation where we have a barn that's full of claiming types and you can't really recognize. But to me, this has always been the best yardstick. Like when you look at clocker reports and, as a horseman, I know you're the same way, Joe, when you're kind of looking at it and saying, wow, Naismith worked with Extra Hope. Hey, American Heiress, work with this Outwork who's kin to some really nice horses. So all in all, quality in the nth degree, and I would give her a solid B as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this question from Desiree is a great question for you with your training background. Can you explain, and at least when you were a trainer, really what went into your mindset of why and how you chose which horse would work on the inside and outside?
Well, I think primarily it's just to give them the experience. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if the next time we see these two work together, if they're flip-flops. So experience, if the horse has had prior experience, you'd be more inclined to, say, for example, have them on the outside if you're trying to teach a horse to the inside. But it's all part of a learning curve, if you will. It's just, for example, if you work a horse out of the starting gate and you're going to start on the inside versus the outside, if you were looking to increase speed with relaxation or get a gait approval with relaxation, you'd want to be on the outside. If you're wanting a hard drill and trying to exert the individual, then likely you'd want to be on the inside because you've got a workmate that's putting and applying pressure to you. So I've always been a big fan of training horses in tandem, whether it be 2, 3, 4 horses, if at all possible. Problem is like in certain parts of the country, you're at the mercy of how much stable help you have. I mean, Chad Brown, Todd Pletcher, Christophe Clement, likely those bigger barns, they'll have the opportunity where you can actually get horses and let them go out in the masses. I mean, look at Ballydoyle, Aidan O'Brien, when he brings his team out here from for the Breeders' Cup, it's mind-blowing. It's like an army, essentially.
Yeah. Now, and I'll say that Phil D'Amato, you saw him do that in the past few months, and maybe it was a few months ago. He was working a lot of horses in sets of 3 and sets of 4, and you don't see it out there on a daily basis when I go out there in the mornings at Santa Anita, and I'm sure as you. So it's kind of nice to see that, give you almost like a simulated race. Definitely for some of these young, inexperienced horses, it can be a great learning experience.
Oh, it certainly can. And you'd be surprised the little nuances that you would think would be a foregone conclusion. Say, for example, horses that run first time out, when they come out on the track, they've never seen a pony escort in their lives.
Yeah.
It blows my mind. You have no idea. Having worked on TVG all these years, I might be popping on. Could be a race at Keeneland, and I see a horse that's going to motion toward the lead pony, and they just sell out. So, and you can really kind of clue in on which trainers are doing their homework. Yeah. So, Kathy, she was a great host, or definitely a great guest on our show last week. Kathy, welcome to the my Racehorse Wednesday week show or Wednesday work show. Joe, tell me about the leads and what's that all about?
If we could get a video up as well.
Any video is fine.
Yeah, any video is fine. But in essence, when those horses are coming down the straight, you want them to be on their right lead, which means their right leg is leading in the action. And to me, not to all, but it will be clear once you finally are able to pick up when that right leg goes front and see that lead change, you can do it. When they're going around those turns, that left lead can be in front where their left lead's leading the way. But we'll see once they turn for home. And Hannah, you can even fast forward a little bit to when they're about to straighten up. Not too early, but yeah, when they're going around the turn. So you'll see here the horses are on their left lead. I wish we were a little more zoomed in. On Extra Hope in particular, he changed that lead right away. Naismith was a touch later, took him about 2 to 3 strides to change that lead. Like I said, it might take us another video to really break it down in slow motion for you guys. But in essence, when they're turning for home, you want to see them flip to that right leg going in front down the lane, and that's being on the right lead.
I thought that workout would have been fine to show back, but Hannah's going to bring up another. But, the importance of lead changes are virtually what they sound, in a sense that it gives the horse an extra gear, if you will. But also, if you kind of in your head, you think about the circumference and the bending of the turns. Like, say, for example, when deep cover breaks off, you can see he's on that left lead. He's going to hit that turn. By being on that left lead, that will enable him to get through the turn. And, within the blink of an eye, you see him switch into the right lead. But centripetal force will essentially carry horses out. Like, say, for example, they stayed on their right lead. And I don't mean they're correct, they're actual right. And they're moving laterally. Essentially, what will happen is that they'll float to the outside fence. So leads are there in order to keep horses kind of leaning toward the inside so they don't lose ground. And also certain horses, they tend to run better on opposite leads. There might be a horse here, say, for example, let's watch the lead change right there. A very fluid lead change. And, that to me is a great indicator as far as athleticism and talent. But there have been horses, if you go back and watch the rivalry between Alydar and Affirmed, it's a crazy phenomenon, because between those two, in those 7 races, I would say at least 6 of those races, both either never switched leads. They stayed on their left lead. And, a lot of that is because of a horse that's maybe more comfortable on that lead, and they're actually showing momentum. The worst thing for me, Joe, and, obviously speaking to Kathy, is that when you see a rider down the lane and they're like throwing across and they're just shifting their weight, trying to get them to switch, and inevitably it'll cost them a race if they would have just left the horse alone on their lead. But you teach leads so that they can kind of manipulate and maneuver more fluidly and effectively and efficiently. I think that's really what it boils down to.
Yep. No, I couldn't agree more. And like you touched on, I've seen it plenty of times where mainly a horse that's coming from off the pace, a closer that may be closing on the wrong lead, the rider's doing everything they can to try to change that lead. And in essence, it probably ended up hurting the horse worse, because the horse was moving and at least picking up ground. And some horses are going to be like that. And like we mentioned, I think on the last show, you'll see horses in Europe. Sometimes those will be straightaway races where maybe it might not be as important. But still, even on their turn races, that you'll see horses finishing on the wrong lead. And it's more just how efficiently they're striding at that point.
All right. We have one final question. And this is from Joy McReynolds. She says, what signal does the jockey use to change leads?
Well, I'm going to kind of highlight what you just talked about. You'll see a lot of them shifting their weight, and they could be trying to grab, the rein from one side, trying to get that weight momentum to switch and get them ultimately to switch leads.
Right. And you can, it could be a little shoulder tap with the whip. It could be, the throwing of a cross to get a better hold. It could be a simple kick of the boot. It could be a noise. But the last time I've heard a horse that you could actually chirp and get them to switch leads, I mean, this isn't the circus. But at the end of the day, you just kind of look for that subtle, little slap of the neck. And it could be just a whip change going from right to left or left to right. And, for these Wednesday workshops, we're hoping to potentially, we're going to have clockers potentially coming on here sooner than later, in addition to maybe having exercise riders just to kind of, get their impression of, what's going on. And they can answer those types of questions, but, that's kind of the long and short of it. Yep. All right. Well, Joe, it's been a great show. Wonderful job as always. Let's go back to the grading process, if you will. First and foremost, what was your grade on Naismith?
I'm going to give him a solid B. I thought it was another solid work from him. He's been a horse that just continues to do well, so I'd give him a solid B there. If it would have got up to that B+, I would have liked to see a little bit of a better finish. But as I mentioned, it wasn't completely unexpected being his first 6 furlong work, so you had to expect him to get a little bit tired. So I think he got a lot out of that work.
All right, I'll give him a B+ for the sake of his workmate in his first 6 furlong drill. I was very satisfied with that. Deep cover, I'm pretty sure I know your answer.
Yeah, I mean, I try to keep the A's. It's like if you watch, Dave Portnoy's pizza reviews, if you're giving out A's all the time, how do you possibly top it? So I'm going to say B+ for deep cover. Really thought, I hate to do it as a 3/8 work, but it was the work that really caught my eye. He's just a horse that he's got something about him, and he likes to work, and I love that. Same thing with Naismith. Very, very competitive when they work, and I like to see that in a horse.
All right, Carpe Venom.
I'm going to give her B minus. Just a maintenance drill, B minus for her. And I think you'll see her pick it up in a couple weeks.
I think deep cover, I'll give him a solid B for that. And kind of the expectation is that he could go out and do that for a 3 furlong drill. But as he progresses, if he continues to look that way, let's say when he's up to a 5-panel spin, it will more than undoubtedly be a solid A. Carpe Venom, I give her a B. That's what she is. That's what she does. And looking at quick conversation, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to say B. I want to see the next one. It's even a handicapping angle. You'll see horses first time stretch out or first time turf. Maybe it's always their best the first time they do it. So I'm going to say B. I was happy with the way she traveled. I thought it was an improvement from last week. But to really take her to that next level, I want to see it do it again next week.
Yeah, I would agree. I do feel that Christophe Clement found something with the grass. He certainly was much more optimistic. I guess that's the best word for it. Yeah. And, the one thing to understand is that these horses, they go through growth spurts. They're like children. And for those of you that have had children, they go through growing pains in the sense that it's not just a physical thing. It's a mental state. Mm-hmm. So for me, with quick conversation, I like the movement on grass. I appreciate the fact that Christophe Clement tried something different and it worked. So I give her better than a C plus, not quite a B, somewhere in between. Let's call it a B minus, but on the right track. American Heiress?
Yeah, I'm going to give her a solid B. Just the way she travels, she's catching my eye as well. Again, it's a 3/8 work, so it can be a little deceiving, but I'm very happy with the way she's entered Todd Pletcher's barn. So I think you're going to continue to see her work the same as she goes through those progressions.
She was ultra fluid, and again, props to our partners in Spendthrift and the partnership and patience. I think is the best word that I can find there. And of course, Raul Reyes down at King's Equine. Doing an exceptional job and for the veterinarians. She had that little stall incident, earlier in the year. And thankfully, she's been able to bounce back, but physically looks great. I'm going to give her a B plus. That's how impressed I am with her. I realize it's only a 3 furlong drill, but we're definitely on the right track. All right. Well, that's going to wrap up today's show, Joe. A wonderful job as always, and we have a graphic here with the upcoming works. And I know you're going to be out there tomorrow. A couple of key works. Tis Magician. They just announced the Wild West bonus, by the way. And what's that all about?
Yeah. So I actually talked to Gary. So for the Big Cap Pacific Classic, help me out on the third one. What am I drawing a blank on?
The Gold Cup.
The Hollywood Gold Cup, they're going to be offering $1 million bonus. So if a horse was to win, sweep those 3 races, the total purse for that horse would be $1.87 million, I believe, off the top of my head. And I know talking to assistant trainer Gary Mandela, it sure made the decision of the next ideal spot where to run him a little bit easier. So I definitely, we mentioned before, Tis Magician will be nominated for the Big Cap, and I'm sure pending how that goes, that'll probably be the plan on March 6th.
All right, so we'll be covering those works on next week's show. As you can see here, Daddy's Joy going to re-enter for next week. She'll have a workout this Saturday for you, and we'll hopefully have that on next week's show, and she'll be entered up. And as you can see by the list here, subject to change pending weather and trainer's decision. You can see Naismith could be Sunday or Monday. And Storm Shooter, his target is the following week. Is that right?
Yes, I want to say it is the 19th off the top of my head, and that is at a other than allowance race, New York bred. So hopefully we tried entering in that race a few weeks ago, wasn't able to go. So hopefully we can get that race to go. All
right, perfect. All right, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of myself, Nick Hines, the Sarge, Joe Moran, and of course Hannah, a wonderful job today producing this show. Wednesday Work Show, a big thank you to those that took their valuable time out interacting with us. Hey, look, we're here at your disposal. Feel free to stop by anytime during these Wednesday programs. Be sure to get tuned in on Friday for My Racehorse Live. We'll see you then.